My name is Dr. Sandis Šrāders, and I have the pleasure to invite you for a podcast with Emir Abrashi, Vice President at NUOVO, communications specialist and foreign policy researcher, who is also a former advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kosovo. The events in Balkans have always shaped the European future and especially the security affairs. Kosovo has been one of the peaceful resolutions for Europe to coexist for multiple ethnicities and religious groups. Now, the recent events have shown some turbulence with Kosovo and inside the Kosovo. We are very happy to welcome Emir Abrashi, who will be talking to the board member of Latvian Transatlantic Organization, Dr. Sandis Šrāders, about the recent events in Kosovo. And I'll just start, because with the new geopolitical realities, I think the conditions, security conditions everywhere are changing, especially the Balkans. And Balkans, especially after the Cold War, was the melting, what was the area of different ethnic and territorial disputes. Europe alone was not able nor capable to face all those challenges, and without the United States' help, it was impossible to resolve. I was really happy. I am really happy and proud to learn that Latvian, Estonian, and Lithuanian troops, as a part of the NATO operation in Kosovo, were one of those helping to support the peace and security in the region, which was lasting for some time. But now with the new war and conflicts escalating, the conditions between major powers becoming harsher. Also, the situation in the Balkans is worsening, and we have already the signs of the talk of the war and militarization between ethnic groups and countries like Kosovo and Serbia. Therefore, I wanted to ask for more detailed explanation and insight into this conflict to our expert, Emir Abrashi, who is a vice president at NUOVO. NUOVO is an umbrella company of several companies that function in Kosovo since 2010. And your team brings together 20-year plus experience for clients starting from real estate, brokerage management, investment, and communications companies. So you have very sound grip over the commercial and economic entities. That should be the remedy for different kind of social and military conflicts in region among different groups. Apart from this, you have been also a researcher and lecturer at the most salient institutions in Kosovo. And you have been also advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kosovo. I think really pivotal position that you have occupied before to explain what should be the conditions and situation and resolutions now between the conflicting sides, especially in the northern part of Kosovo, where the more profound Serbian community is living. So, Emir, if I may, would you be so kind as to explain the broader overarching conditions and then the conditions on the ground to us so we could grasp the situation and the changing security perspective? The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for, bringing this topic to the Latvian audience as well. To have a broader understanding of the situation in the Balkans. As you said, after the Cold War, the Balkans was a melting pot of Europe, and that was due to different ethnicities and religious groups living together under one country at the time, the former Yugoslavia. And that managed to survive throughout after the Second World War until the 90s. Due to the fact that nationalism was suppressed in former Yugoslavia. In the 90s, nationalism began to re-emerge, and that was the sign that something is wrong. And once nationalism starts, people start thinking that their ethnicity, their national group is better than the other one, so they should, start fighting. And this is what we see happened in the Balkans throughout the 90s, that culminated with several wars. It was initially the war between Yugoslavia at the time and Slovenia that lasted very long. lasted only a few days, and Slovenia declared independence. Macedonia was the only country to break out without a war. Then it was Croatia, it was Bosnia, and in the end it was Kosovo. So Kosovo was the last war in the Balkans, and it ended in 1999. And I think Europe and the West generally understood that they cannot allow a second Bosnia to happen in Kosovo. So they intervened with the full military might that NATO brought, led by the United States. And that ended the war. And ever since, Kosovo has been a NATO protectorate. So to date, we have NATO presence as part of the KFOR mission, which is the Kosovo force. There are 27 contributing countries currently in Kosovo maintaining the peace. Among those 27 countries, there are 3,735 troops located in Kosovo, and Latvia is present in Kosovo with 136 troops. Generally, when you hear about Kosovo, and I live in Europe, I live in Austria myself, so generally when you think of Kosovo, you hear that it's a source of instability in the Balkans, and sometimes we are not given enough credit for what we truly are. We are much more than a source of instability. We have a beautiful young population that has so much potential, that Kosovo brings so much potential for investors from abroad, to outsource services. And Kosovo is much more than just a source of instability, but you don't hear that quite often. And I can say that despite the fact that Kosovo is sometimes, in the making headlines for, certain interethnic not conflicts, it's instabilities in the northern part of the country. Those are very rare, and those rarely end up in injuries among people, and that is thanks to the NATO presence as well. Now, the NATO mission in Kosovo, the KFOR, is not very active. I think the people serving in the soldiers serving for KFOR are some of the luckiest in the world serving abroad, because they don't have to pull out their guns very often. They are there to support the interethnic communication, to facilitate dialogue. But other than that, it's not like we wake up every morning hearing gunshots and bombs being thrown. Now, let me explain to your audience that Kosovo is a majority Albanian ethnic population, and it has other non-majority groups that are recognized by the Constitution and have full rights, and their rights are protected, and they have reserved seats in the parliament as well. The largest of these non-majority groups are the Serbians. They make up around 9% of the population in Kosovo. They are mainly located in the northern part of Kosovo, but there are some enclaves in the southern part as well. But the majority of them are located in the northern part of Kosovo. The challenge Kosovo has so far is to integrate those groups, the Serbians living in the north, into the Kosovo society. And that is mainly because they refuse to recognize Kosovo government's authority, and they have been for 22 years now living under the impression that they live in Serbia. They have refused to integrate, as opposed to the people living, to the Serbians living in the southern side. They have refused to get integrated into our institutions, and the Kosovo government has been unable to exercise full authority in the north. Now, this has been a problem that Serbia has exploited through the years. And every time there is a momentum for an agreement or a decision that Kosovo side makes, the Serbian authorities will throw oil to the fire and will, activate these separatist groups in the north that usually tend to block the roads, but that's about it. It's not like there are fightings going on. So this is very important for your audience to understand. When we hear about Kosovo, it's not about an ethnic problem in Kosovo. It's not about actual fightings. It's they are blocking the roads that lead to the border lines, and hence blocking the connection routes and the trade routes. Other than that, the situation is pretty much stable most of the year. And we have tried to maintain stability through the years through the Pristina-Belgrade dialogue facilitated by the Brussels. The aim of the dialogue has been the normalization of the relations between Kosovo and Serbia. However, 11 years after the dialogue began, we still have not managed to do that. Yes, there have been agreements reached. There are about 34 agreements that have been reached between Kosovo and Serbia. However, we have not managed to reach the final agreement, which is the aim of the dialogue, at least for the Kosovo side, and which is the mutual recognition of Kosovo and Serbia, and a final agreement that is comprehensive and that normalizes the relations. But as far as the dialogue goes, we have had problems with the dialogue, and I think part of the problem has been the European Union's inability to enforce the agreements that have been reached so far. So we have, as I mentioned, 33 agreements that have been reached, but they are not being implemented by neither side, nor Kosovo, and neither Serbia nor Kosovo. And that is for several reasons. Part of it is the political overall situation in both countries, and the recognition by the political side that if they do start implement relations and come closer to a final agreement, they might be losing the next election. So they have been calculating on votes in terms of reaching the peace between Kosovo and Serbia, the already desired peace. But I think this dialogue cannot go on forever, and it needs to be finalized as soon as possible. But for this to happen, I think the European Union should step in and increase the role it has in the dialogue, and not only be a facilitator of the dialogue, but also a guarantor of the agreements that are reached between Kosovo and Serbia. Just your microphone, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Emir, for the really explicit explanation of the conditions on the ground, and for reminding me that I have to unmute my microphone. I think, and thank you very much for your conclusion. I think overarching that the presence of the KFOR mission in Kosovo has been the result of the peace. Of course, there are conditions like, for example, blockades and challenges that we could overcome. And the Pristina government has tried to build the civilian polity where every single ethnic group would enjoy the same rights, and they would accept ID cards, the language, number plates, other things, which create tensions, and of course are little reasons for tension between Serbian side and the Kosovo side. You mentioned that European efforts have been rather inefficient to implement or enforce the agreements that have been reached between the two, let's say, conflicting sides, or to implement agreements by building the trust and confidence between two groups. the question is, you mentioned that European Union has been, or Europe has been inefficient in shaping this challenge. Would you name a couple of steps how European Union could act or be bolder and more efficient peace dividend to the region? Because before you already mentioned the United States, the bald eagle nesting in the region has been the guarantee for the peace. NATO forces and Americans and its allies being present in the region they have delivered the peace and stability. What is that the Europeans could do more for the peace and stability in the region and the resolution of the challenges, so the Serbian side would be more accepting to build this political civilian state together?
While I leave the security matters to NATO, I think the EU should focus on the diplomatic solutions. That is the continuation of the Pristina-Belgrade dialogue. But before that, I think the EU should start to once and for all speak in one voice when it comes to the resolution of this frozen conflict between Kosovo and Serbia. The problem so far has been that EU has not talked in one voice. There are 5 countries out of the European Union that do not recognize Kosovo, namely Greece, Romania, Cyprus, Spain, and which one did I forget? And Slovakia, sorry. So there are 5 EU countries that do not recognize Kosovo as an independent country, and this has caused the European Union to lag behind in being unified in terms of coming with a solution for the Balkans. Another problem that has happened is that the EU has been unable to deliver in its own promises. So in 2004 Thessaloniki forum, there has been this idea that EU would get enlarged, that there is a future for the Balkans in the European Union. With years passing, countries have started to lose faith in the integration process in the EU. They have started to think that this is just a farce. It's not going to happen, and the EU keeps promising but not delivering. This is a problem that EU as a facilitator in this case needs to reestablish trust between sides. And trust means that when they promise something, they will keep it. So to illustrate with an example, both Kosovo and Serbia are directed towards EU integration. Serbia is a candidate country for EU integration, whereas Kosovo has still not received the status of candidate state. It is a potential candidate state, as the EU likes to call it, and that is due to the fact that 5 countries, 5 members don't recognize Kosovo. And as a result, EU does not officially recognize Kosovo as an independent and sovereign country. However, when it came to the visa liberalization, the process that all the Balkans went through, everyone had, a set of criteria to fulfill, and Kosovo was given 95, which was twice more than any of our neighboring countries' criteria that we had to fulfill. Whereas everyone filled half less than Kosovo, they got the visa liberalization. Kosovo has fulfilled 95 criteria in 2018. We are in 2022, 4 years later, and the EU has still been unable to offer visa liberalization for the citizens of Kosovo. So if such a simple thing as visa liberalization is not, EU is not able to offer, how can they promise to us that there is a European path for Kosovo and the political scene and the people in Kosovo to actually believe in that? So the problem with the EU has been the inability to deliver, and they have lost the trust of the parties. So, for example, Serbia feels free to disobey any of the agreements that have been reached. Kosovo does the same, and in the end of the day, whether Kosovo has done anything or has not, it will still be criticized, because the EU has this approach towards Serbia that in order not to let it direct its antennas towards Moscow, they will, make concessions to Serbia. And this is unfair. Kosovo is a free country because of the West, because of members of the European Union and the United States. Kosovo does not have allies in the East. So instead of, rewarding Kosovo, the EU has been punishing Kosovo. So whether it's been constructive in the dialogue or not, Kosovo has ended up being, punished by the European Union. And as a result, people have started to feel that there are double standards when it comes to Kosovo. And I think this needs to be rectified sooner rather than later by the European Union. And there should be a new strategy towards the Balkans, offering countries a clear timeline for European integration, and in specific terms, offering a timeline for Kosovo and Serbia. But this needs to begin by liberalizing visas for the citizens of Kosovo as a sign of good faith, because in the end of the day, they are not doing us a favor. We have fulfilled 95 criteria that the European Union itself has set forth. And I think it's very important that Brussels has a serious reflection with all the member states about what the future of the European Union is, because every time something happens, a process begins. Every time we see some light in the end of the tunnel, there is one member country that blocks something. So, for example, in the visa liberalization process, it's France and the Netherlands for Kosovo. For the opening of the accession talks with Albania and North Macedonia, it was Bulgaria that was vetoing it. So the European Union should gather and think of what the future of the European Union and the European continent is. I think the situation in Ukraine shows how fragile peace is. And if we do not work together in bringing countries closer, divisions will start to widen. Cracks will begin to show. And when cracks begin to show, there are countries like Russia and China that will try and take advantage of. Fortunately, in Kosovo, that has not been the case, and that's due to the high influence of the West. But we cannot say that that hasn't happened in the rest of the Balkans. And that happens because these countries see gaps that they can fill, either with investment or with promising dreams that the European Union has been unable to promise or fulfill.
Thank you very much, Emir. It seems like we are returning to realpolitik, with geopolitics occupying more and more of the international scene. And you mentioned the salience of the United States and NATO in the peace building, and we saw recently the leadership of Serbia and Kosovo have been attending meetings in Brussels, meeting with the Secretary General of NATO, and also mentioning some other diplomatic contacts in Brussels. What do you think should be the result of those agreements that are brokered first by the transatlantic security institutions between Kosovo and Serbia? There was a talk. Serbia is boosting its military capability as an underliner of its national interests, and on the other side, NATO mentioned, like, if there is any escalation and surge of the talk of the war in the region, it would increase also its military presence. How do you think, which direction these talks should go? Increased military presence and peace as a result, and stability as a result, or de-escalation and deflation of this militarization war talk in the region should be a result of the meetings in Brussels very recently?
I definitely think de-escalation should be the aim. I travel quite frequently, and I meet a lot of people, and I can say one thing for sure: it's we have more in common than differences, and we should recognize and should unite towards these commonalities rather than the differences that we have. Serbia may be increasing its military capacities. However, I don't think that anyone in the Serbian leadership is, excuse my French, stupid enough to begin something in Kosovo, knowing that there is a NATO presence in Kosovo. And in this sense, even if there is a slightest chance that there will be an attack in Kosovo soil, NATO would increase its capacities in Kosovo. However, I don't see that as a real threat. That is more a threat for internal use in Serbia, saying that we are prepared to take Kosovo, which is the heart of Serbia, and so on and so forth, the nationalistic agenda. However, I think that they are well aware that attacking Kosovo means that they will be faced not only with the Kosovars, they will be also faced with NATO troops. So you have to understand the KFOR, the NATO mission in Kosovo, is the largest military presence of NATO outside of the NATO members. So this is, you know, a reason for anyone to know that NATO is not here just temporarily. The US has one of the largest bases here in Kosovo, just 20 kilometers from Pristina. So it's not likely that the US will suddenly pack the bags and leave. So I think this is clear for Serbian side as well. What I want to see and how I want to envision the future is a political elite, both in Kosovo and Serbia, that starts talking to the people and explaining the importance of de-escalation, the importance of normalization of ties, the importance of establishing full diplomatic relations between Kosovo and Serbia. There is a progressive wing in Serbia that has started, to grow and to say that, Kosovo is independent, Kosovo has been lost, and Kosovo is not coming back. I think the Serbian leadership should recognize this to its own people, and they should, kill this idea that Kosovo has still chances to be returned under Serbia. That opportunity has been lost in the 90s. Serbia has had the opportunity to do that, but resolving into genocide and then expecting that these people that underwent genocide will, come back and live happily ever after with Serbian government, I think it's unlikely to happen in any circumstance. So de-escalation is definitely what should happen, and I think it's a responsibility of both political leaderships in Kosovo and in Serbia to work towards that. However, what I expect, and I mentioned the inability of the European Union, what I expect is that the United States should be more involved in the process. The United States has the capacities, has the capabilities to pressure both sides and to reach a final agreement. Currently, the White House is occupied by a president who in the 90s has been personally involved in the Balkans, in the conflicts. So I hope to see that President Biden will have the resolution of this conflict in its agenda and mutual recognition between Kosovo and Serbia as a priority in his foreign policy. However, when I call for U.S. More active intervention in this part of the world, I do not mean the European Union to be sidelined. I want to see Washington and Brussels working hand in hand, not what happened under the Trump administration, where Brussels was completely sidelined, Washington took over, and not what happened under the Obama administration, when Brussels was left to deal with the Balkans alone, and Washington, remained away. I want to see them together, working hand in hand, and a sign of that was the presence of the special representative of the American Department of State for the Balkans yesterday in the meeting in Brussels, Mr. Gabriel Escobar, who was present during the meetings that happened between the Kosovo Prime Minister and the Serbian the president. However, I still think that there is a lot to be done in terms of EU-US coordination in Balkans, but it is time. 11 years after this dialogue has begun, I don't think that if we push this any further, it will benefit anyone. In fact, the only one who benefits from this dialogue being lengthier and lengthier is Serbia and undoubtedly Russia. In terms of the Kosovo interests and in terms of the European Union's interests, I think the end of the dialogue is and should be a priority.
Thank you very much for so explicit explanation, and we really hope that that the presence of the troops without any increases will be the result of the peace, as it has been the case for years already. Americans always welcome in the European in Europe, and it has been a peace dividend with broader and deeper coalitions and more partners. Like stability and peace has been more efficient and long-lasting. Therefore, I very much hope that the White House will not be bogged in the domestic affairs only, but will pay much desired attention to the European affairs. I think convincing the Netherlands and France, it's like only the United States can influence European Union and its member states in a way others cannot. Thank you very much, Emir Abrashi, Vice President of NUOVO, and also communications specialist and foreign policy researcher, former advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kosovo, for the insight and conclusions. I hope this material will serve very well by the Latvian Transatlantic Organization and the others, to understand the evolution of the events and state of affairs in the region. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure.
Same here. Bye-bye.
Bye.